To order. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, roll call. Councilor Cody.
Here.
Councilor Crass.
Here.
Councilor LaRochelle.
Here.
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
Councilor Mason.
Here.
And Councilor Pomelo.
Here.
Councilor Bowie is here. Okay. First item, Twyla, please.
There are no public hearings, so it's under consent agenda. Order 2010-1 to approve the minutes of December 1, 2009.
Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I have a motion from Councilor Cody, a second from Councilor Kraft. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, we have Order 2010-2, CMP Streetlight Addition for Capitol Avenue, Littlefield Road, and King Road.
I'll address this. We had a request from Main Recycling if we would put an additional street light down near one of their parking areas. They purchased some land down there, and they've had their employees parking, and they all come in pretty early, and they leave when it's late, and that's one of the requests. The other request was made here one night when we were talking about the King Road Bridge, that a gentleman had asked if we could look at putting a light on the intersection of Littlefield Road and King Road. So that is a decision that the council makes, if we were to put streetlights on or not. So that's why we're here.
Okay.
I just have a little, not an issue, but we are still continuing to work on our elimination maybe of some
Yes.
streetlights, correct?
Yep.
I guess that concerned me a little bit because I know we were working on maybe getting rid of some and now we're adding some. So I just hope we're still in the process of.
Yep. Heard.
I guess the concern I would have is, saying that what Gina mentioned last year at budget season, we really pushed hard to see what we'd do about the streetlights. And a while ago, I had mentioned to Steve that it'd be nice if we actually had a policy, very much like the planning board and appeals board goes through, just a checklist of what you need to do, what would actually make for a perfect place to put a light. And I think that's probably a process that we need to go through the rest of the town to look to see the lights we already have and see which ones are good and bad. And again, it's really hard to justify any new lights, I would think, not that they're probably not necessary, but the idea of trying to fall within a format of, does it meet the requirements? There's been a lot of questions last year during budget season. A lot of the lights in town don't really serve the purpose that they need to be. And just with all the discussion we had about eliminating lights, it's really hard to start putting new lights on unless we find that they're really necessary. Again, and maybe they are. Maybe it's a very legit thing, but it'd be nice to actually have a checklist saying that it meets 8 out of 10 requirements, and this is why it would do it. I know another one that I think we'd have to be very careful when we start actually putting lighting in for commercial businesses for their parking areas. I know we pay CMP at ours every month for a light because of that same concern, and I just don't know where that would actually stop. I mean, not saying it's probably, again, not necessary or that there needs to be light there, but I think you really got to kind of, again, my whole point goes back to the idea of I think we need to have a set requirement of why we have put lights in town. And I know, Steve, I mentioned to you in the past, and you said there are some ordinances that other towns use to meet the requirements why streetlights are put up. And with the budget being the way it is again this year, I would think that we would just need to kind of follow along with that.
We have a draft that Roger has, and along with some other ordinances that we're looking at. So we have a draft. We haven't got it back yet. Also, I have maps for you in there. We tried to print the maps with all the CMP maps that we had of the lighting on a smaller version, and what happens is you just can't really see the individual lights and where they are, so we made them large for you to take home. We did talk about having a workshop where we can lay it out and talk about it. I think Chief Brooks needs to be part of that conversation, because he and I have talked about what are the guidelines that you as a public safety official feel we need to look at when we talk about streetlights. So it's another workshop, and I don't want to overwhelm you with workshops, but we need to do that before the budget process, so you can decide what you feel are the necessary requirements based on what Chief Brooks is telling us, and possibly Chief Gallipo. But when you see that map and you see all the green dots, it's amazing how many, we have over 300 streetlights throughout this community, and there's many of them are on the back rural roads, and I question the need to have so many on the rural roads. You have a lot in the Lisbon Falls downtown where it's more condensed, but again, do we need that many streetlights? And there are some things that we're going to have to deal with, and we were under contract with CMP for some of this. So it might be limited in terms of what we can take out and what we have to keep.
May I also just finish? I think it's worthy of anybody that comes in with a request, especially since Mr. Cody had brought it forward because people had a concern. I think everybody that actually has a concern about streetlight needs to be, represented and actually put through the process to make sure that, I don't think you can actually say no to anybody that has a concern about streetlight, because evidently there's legitimate concerns, but I think that as requests come forward, I think they ought to just be taken care of as, do they meet the requirements?
Roger, do you have something you wanted to say?
It was brought to me, not just one phone call. I got several phone calls from people living on King Road and asked why there couldn't be a street light there because of the poor visibility of the way that street intersects at that corner. You're much higher on the Littlefield Road, and when you come up out of King Road, or when you come into it, your lights, it's a completely blind corner. And now with the new bridge, the cars are traveling a little bit quicker up through there, and I think it's, the person, in fact, the people that brought it in, if you need names, I'll list names up to you of the people that called, and they had a legitimate concern, and I brought it to the council. Now, you at one time said, Steve, you was gonna have Ryan go up and look at it.
Yep.
Did he look at
He
it?
looked at it, and again, he came back and said, you probably could use one, but that's a decision the council has to make. That's why it's on the agenda tonight.
Well, excuse me.
Go ahead.
You done?
No, I'm finished.
Well, we've been talking about this last year, about looking at the whole streetlight thing, and I don't think that's moved forward much yet. I think it needs to.
Does.
And, we need to really get on top of it, and we need to look at the whole scenario and decide, if that needs a light, then there might be another area where we eliminate a light, and we're not gonna increase any cost, but we don't have enough information to make any of these decisions.
No, you don't.
But we ought to be on top of it, because if that's a dangerous intersection, then we need to get on top of it before somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, no, I used to live over on King Road, and it is a rather dangerous intersection, and that's pretty a major intersection between those two connector roads there, Littlefield and King Road, so I think that would probably be a good spot for a light.
Well, we certainly can schedule a night. If you want to put it on one of your council nights, we can keep the agenda, try to keep it light like we have tonight when we have other things to talk about, and do it in a workshop where we can sit around a table, lay the maps out, and you can see where the lights are. And we can have Chief Brooks here if you want to do it.
I want to have, as part of that, though, I want to have the draft policy so that we have
Right.
some logic of what we're looking at as part of, I mean, it's great to look at where all the streetlights are and everything and know that, but without some policy guidelines on what's right and what's wrong, or what we think is right or wrong, to go into that discussion, I don't think we can make valued decisions. Roger?
I think that the discussion needs to be made, the light situation has to be looked at, but I don't think we should shun the responsibility of moving forward on action to clear up a dangerous situation. And I think that's something the council has to look at. We don't wait till somebody gets hurt before we move. That's my, I agree we have issues.
Right.
I agree we need workshops, and I agree that we have too many streetlights, and there are streetlights burning all night that I think, and I agree with you, Steve, are completely unused, out in the country and what have you. But when we have a safety issue, I think we should jump on it and deal with it.
Then why don't you take that one spot and send Ryan over there and see if it meets the criteria, and we'll make a decision on that one spot.
Well, you really don't have a criteria currently in place. So you have to look at a draft ordinance, and Roger's going through it to make sure it meets all the legal requirements, and I'm sure I could get it back by the 19th and get it to you the week before, so you have a chance to look at it and make some recommendations on the 19th. And then at the same time, we can sit down around the table after we finish our regular meeting and look at the streetlights. And that, you'll take the maps with you tonight, so you'll have a chance to look at them and ask good questions, I think, of why do we have so many out there.
Well, why can't we do this? I mean, a little common sense. All us councils drive out there at night, take a look at it, send out buttons, send out the chief, send out Ryan. And if we all agree that it's dangerous, then we don't need this big process on this one particular streetlight. We can just decide, right?
Up to you.
I mean,
Well, I
I
think
mean,
it
if it's
would,
obvious,
you
I mean, if
can't-
it's obvious.
I think he's trying to kill a couple birds with one stone.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Yeah.
that process. We need to do that. But if it's an obvious to all of us, then,
Right, but we have to vote on it. And you can't vote by email, or you can't vote by just
no,
verbally
we'd have to
coming
meet
in.
again. I know we'd have to meet again. I'm
Right.
not just saying tomorrow.
Right.
No, I mean, next
Okay.
meeting, I'm not just
Okay.
saying in the meantime, between the next meeting, why don't you just send everybody out there?
Yep.
We all take a drive by there.
Ryan's been out there already, and I know
And-
Chief Brooks will have any
and-
history. If there's
Something-
been any problems there, which I don't think there has been,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I'll make
Yeah.
sure with him.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure he's here for that meeting on the 19th when we have a workshop, so.
We might want
Well,
to check
the
with
That's it.
we want to check with the neighbors too and see how they feel about it, make sure they're okay with that before we put a light right up in their yard.
Yep.
That's true. The other thing that we,
Right,
I
I mean,
had
the person that lives
suggested.
right on the corner may
Right,
not want the
yes.
light. I don't
And
know.
Richard Maine had suggested also, is Ryan was gonna look into, changing these bulbs, the efficiency, what the cost savings was gonna be, and so that we could look at some hard numbers on starting to convert these lights over for long-term savings. So has any of that homework been done, do you know?
Yes,
of?
some of it's been done,
Okay, well-
and some of it's expensive.
Yeah.
So we'll put it on a spreadsheet and tell
Okay,
you
good.
what
All
it
right.
is.
Now, I do have one question. On the maps that we have, that you have, where you have all the streetlights laid out, does the town pay for every one of those, or are any of those streetlights paid for by the business or paid for by the state? Because some of the streetlights are on state roads, so I don't know if the town pays for those, and I know, and I'm just throwing out an example, but I don't know if the streetlights on Capitol Avenue, I think some of the businesses may have put up their own streetlights and may be paying for those.
I don't know if
So-
there's any even over there, is there, Mike?
Yeah,
I think there's some, I think Enterprise Electric put up a streetlight or two at their area, and I think that's something they're paying for.
their
I'm
meter.
not sure, right? But, so I don't want, because the only lights we can address, right, are the lights that we pay for.
Right.
You can,
Roger.
Mr. Maines has got his hand up. He has done a little bit of research into this issue. Maybe he can shed some light on it.
Richard?
That's good.
Briefly, please.
Yes. The streetlights that are listed on the CMP maps and reports are all paid for by the town, are rented or leased by the town. Some the town owns and pays for the electricity coming over the lines. Some they lease, they're actually owned by CMP. There are also the wattage issues that are involved. I would encourage you to think about non-politicizing the issue. If the council is going to take its time, and they all have constituents, every one of you have constituents, if you take your time and do it, then you're politicizing the issue. I think that in the policy one policy that I suggested was to include the police chief and the town engineer in reviewing all of these things, maybe the fire chief, but to see it and go by the standards, which are national safety standards, and adopt those. It's a cut and dried matter. Does this meet those standards? If you take one tonight and approve it and deny the other, then you are showing favoritism and discriminating against another taxpayer. I would encourage you to table it until you set a policy and then use the policy immediately to determine those particular streetlights that need to be going up, or not. Thank you.
Okay, the wishes of the council?
I agree with Richard.
Yeah,
I
makes
agree
sense.
that we need to look at it, and we know that the pole's not going to be put up, or the light's not going to be put up tomorrow anyways.
So, I guess my
So I would say
question,
table it till the 19th.
okay, can we have all of our information for the next meeting?
We'll have it for you probably by the end of the week.
Okay, Roger?
Is there anything in, if we go by streetlights, after a certain time of night, our streetlights will turn off and they'll just blink?
Yeah.
They don't work fully. I wonder if there's anything that can shut streetlights off at a certain time for a saving?
There is. There was an article that I read in the paper about
I
that.
think that would be another way that, you know, in the evening when people are on the
Right.
streets,
Busy.
when
Sometime-
it's busy, have streetlights on, and then after
Say 11 o'clock or
the
something
lights
like
shut
that,
off.
until 5 o'clock the next morning or
Exactly,
something.
exactly.
Yep.
I think that's something we could use
We'll
the
have everybody
information.
here to talk about that, the engineer, Chief Brooks, Chief Gallipo, and we'll get it firsthand.
Do we need anybody from CMP
I don't believe we
in
do.
order to understand?
Ryan has all the information, he's been doing the research.
Okay, so he understands what light bulbs we can change, which ones we can't, and all that kind of
We've had
other good stuff.
Conversations
and-
off and on with CMP about rules of the contract,
Right.
what it would cost to
Okay.
change out the LED,
All right.
or what it would cost to
Try to
change
make
it
sure that we
watch.
have all the answers available to us so we can
Move forward.
move forward and,
I'll get the Gimpy guy in here.
Doc has a comment.
okay. So I'm hearing that council's in favor of just moving this to the next agenda.
Yes.
I'm not in favor of it, but I will move it forward for the sake of getting some kind of a end to the discussion.
Understood. Yep, okay. So we will move this item to our next agenda. Yes, Dot?
I would think that streetlights in rural areas on intersections would be a high priority because intersections are often dangerous. Main Recycling, is it possible for them to put a dusk to dawn light on their building to light their parking lot? I have a dusk to dawn, cost me dearly, but for protection for my tenants on the back of my building.
It can be recommended to them.
Yeah, I'm not, based on where the parking lot is from their actual facility, I'm not sure they could get a bright enough light to get
At some distance.
over there. I think there is some distance
Yeah.
from where their building actually sits, because their building sits on the western end,
Across the street. Oh, yeah.
and their parking lot is on the eastern end. And they have where they stack all their glass and everything in between where the people park and walk across. So, but that's a good thought. Dale?
Well, I know up at Crafts Auto Sales, we put up poles years ago and put lights on them, but you have to have a CMP service, so you pay the light bill every
We
month.
have to.
So
Right, I mean, they could put up their own,
Right,
absolutely, they could. But I don't think they can at Littlefield and King Road, because, I mean, that's
Yeah,
not a
right.
business.
Right. Well, it's an intersection. I mean, I think it's a
Right.
different deal.
Yep. Okay, so we'll move this item to our next, and we'll have, I'll call it a quasi-workshop for that
At the end.
particular discussion at the end of our meeting. Okay. All right, next item, Twyla.
2010-3, town office insulation bids.
You have an insulation bid that just came in on Monday. We had another gentleman who presented to you, Mr. Churchill, and we had another person who had come in to look at the opportunity to do it, and he never got back to us. So I think sometimes a building this size could scare them away, but that's what you have in front of you.
So you had 3 people take a look at this?
We put it out on a construction website to see if we could draw some interest. We had some phone calls, and Mr. Churchill was a recommendation from Casco Engineering, and then this Mr. Dyer contacted me, and wanted to come out and look at it, and there was one from Owl's Head, Maine, that came down several weeks ago to look at it, took some measurements, and never got back to me.
Discussions from council? Roger?
I understand we have some serious issues of insulation in this building, but we've also had some serious issues of water damage in this building. We've had some condensation issues because of the, is it not in our best interest to have this building checked for mold before we insulate?
Yes.
Because if you have mold in this building and you start getting sick employees because of mold issues, this is not going to be a good time for had by all. And now is the time to deal with the mold issue before we cover it with insulation.
When we had the gentleman go up and do the inspection for, looking for mold, we had Eric Doobie from Casco Engineering and one of the architects that was looking at the Public Works building for us for a project. They went up through that and said they did not see any mold, because we did check for that, because we have had mold issues down in Twyla's area. We've had some issues in Jerry Woods' area because of the water leaking down through the walls. Those have all been repaired. We've removed any of the tiles from up above and re-sheetrocked and repainted, so those have been taken care of this past year, and we haven't had any water damage since then. Hopefully we won't. And so Mr. Churchill was asked specifically to look to see, again, to make sure, and there was no mold issues there. So we did cover that, I think, pretty thoroughly to make sure before we blew in insulation, instead of wrapping things up, that we didn't have any mold. So,
It's just that we've had some mold issues in this town that we've had to deal with that weren't real pleasantries.
yeah, I can't, yeah, I can understand that mold is a real issue, especially in a building where we have the public and we have employees. I think we've covered our tracks on that and made sure that before we do this, that we don't have that problem. And according to the people who went up through there, we don't.
Vern?
The two questions. One is, there's quite a difference in between the bids. One actually seems, as far
Really? There's only about $400 difference.
Yeah,
Or-
well, go ahead.
He didn't talk
okay,
about it today.
actually, the way you added up, okay. And again, I guess that would have to be explained a little differently, just to make sure we are comparing apples to apples. Just to make sure, money-wise, we actually had the money that we had put aside for, do we still have funds available
Yes, we
for
do.
doing this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're voting on something we
do
can
have
fund right off.
Yeah, we did plan on that. We had actually planned on doing a little bit more than that, but we wanted to start with this because the engineers and the people we had come in and look at it all said the same thing. It's an insulation issue. It's not a issue where we have to put material, change the roof structure and do all the kind of copper work with heating elements and all that stuff. So we thought this would be the place to start. Let's see if this is.
And the second part of that question would be the idea of, now, we're already got snow on the roof, and we're probably pretty close to the idea of already seeing water dripping down the walls. How soon
Yeah,
can...
we had one over here.
How soon would either one of them be
Well,
able to
Mr.
do it?
Churchill, and they're both chomping at the bit to, they could come in pretty quickly once we decide who you want.
Dale?
Am I reading this right? Churchill says, apply 6 inches of cellulose over existing fiberglass. This one says, apply 12 inches over existing.
Yep.
Okay, so that's 6 inches difference in insulation. So, this one here, we're getting twice as much insulation as this one. Do you read it? Okay? But you gotta read it real carefully, because it's
Yep.
not meant to be deceiving, I'm sure, but
It's just how they wrote
because
it
it
up.
says down there, the 12 inches is what has already been compressed by foot traffic. So technically, this is 6 inches, and this is 12 inches. This brings it over 30R, which is awesome rating.
Is there a difference in the materials?
No, they're all cellulose foam.
So this is a lot better deal. You had, right? You said it's within $400, the two bids?
Yes, one is, the Churchill bid adds up to $16,935,
Yeah, this one's 17.
and the other one's $17,315.
Well, we
So
gained
there's-
6 inches of insulation.
I agree with Mr. Kraft.
I mean,
Has-
if you don't look at it real close, you
Are they
almost think
doing-
you think it's apples for apples, but it's not.
Well, one question I had is because Mr. Churchill did the actual analysis. So
This gentleman never saw what he had done.
never saw.
No.
Right, and that's my concern.
Yeah, no, he did
Right,
not see
is
what
that-
Mr. Churchill had done.
Has he
did
been up there to see the
Oh, yes.
He did go up.
He spent over an hour and a half measuring and
Okay.
looking and.
Now, another thing to your point, Dale, right? I mean, I understand that point, but Mr. Churchill is gonna insulate the ductwork. This guy's not.
Insulate back of shuttle covers. Is that the shuttle covers? Is that it? 2 inches of
No,
foam?
I don't think that's the shuttle covers. I'm trying
I
to
mean, if the
remember.
request is the same,
See, my concern is that, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but we did analysis, there wasn't a set of specs of what we want done, so that you're looking at comparative bid prices.
No,
Right.
everybody knew what needed to be done. That
but this-
we talked about the air ducts when I put it out there, because we knew what needed to be done from what the engineers had said. That we had air leaking through some of the ductwork, and this gentleman here, Mr. Dyer, actually had talked about some of the ductwork and didn't seem to address it in this bid, which is rather interesting, but.
Right, so I mean,
You're both, everybody knew what we were looking at.
Mr. Churchill says down here, to insulate exhaust vents in the attic,
right,
labor and materials for this item will be additional charge, and it'll be $40 per an hour, Mike.
So it'll be over on
That's
top.
on top of the estimate.
right.
So we don't even know what that's gonna be for insulating them ducts.
Right, and we also don't know, and I had difficulty understanding this D.D. Dyer bid because his email read differently that you forwarded us.
Yeah.
His email, when you read his email says, I kind of priced this at 82 cents a square foot. The going rate is like $1.25. If we were in the middle, it'd be like $1, and that's what I'd kind of like to stay at, yet he's given us a piece of paper that says 82 cents.
Well, he's willing to do it for this, is what he was saying was, when you read that, he's saying, boy, I wish you'd give me more. I'll do it for this, but I really would like to have this, but
I hope,
we don't operate that way. Give us a bid.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were asked to give us a proposal.
That's right. But you might want some clarification on this before we vote on
Both
it.
of them.
I
We
would,
don't want to put this off, but
Mike, may I?
yes.
Is it worthwhile to find out if we need 12 inches or 6 inches? And to find out exactly how many vents we have and what the labor and materials would cost to do the vents? Since the stacks, the exhaust vents were an issue that were mentioned before that need to be done.
Right.
Should be count how many stacks there is, how long they are, and how much material and how long it's gonna take, instead of just coming out with we'll guess on the material and the labor when we get there. Ask both of them if they need to go take a second look,
But this
measure,
one, but this one might, I mean, it's not clear enough, but he might be going to do that.
but it's not stated.
But it's
so
not clear enough, so we need to get it clarified.
If it's not in the contract, you're not gonna
Right.
expect it to be done,
Well,
That's
he's,
right?
well,
Can't force them to do it if it's not in the contract.
and the other thing is, because the more insulation you have, the less heat loss you're going to have, so the less moisture you're going to have, you're going to have less leaks. I'm not saying that 12 inches is the answer, but the less heat loss you have, you're going to stop your condensation.
I guess what I was trying to finish to say is it possible to have a definite, like you say, specs? This is what we're looking for, and this is what the quote is and meets that specs, instead of having two random ones that we're trying to decipher? I mean, would that be better versus the idea of, I don't know, we have a lot of questions, and I'd hate to move forward with having two bids with questions on both bids. Because even Mr. Churchill's isn't really a complete bid, because some of the items that need to be done is just based on, if I get the job, it's going to be labor plus materials for doing this part of it. And the other contract really doesn't even mention doing those exhaust vents in the contract. So if it needs to be done, we should be able to hopefully get a firm price on getting them.
What I would, what I would say is, all right, we want to clarify the 6 and 12. One says 6, one says 12, right?
Yep.
Clarify it. And we want, these estimates got to include insulating the vents, all in one price, right? In the, is that what you're saying?
We'll go back at it.
That's what we're looking for. I mean, that's
That's what we asked for.
Yeah, well, that's, but it's,
Well, I know, and I'm not disputing what you
Yeah.
asked for, but what I read in the agreement, right, I can't make, and I'm pretty sure those scuttle covers, because they're talking foam board, that I think those scuttle covers are something closer to your soffit vent areas or whatever, when that guy talked to us about adding and extending that foam.
But when you're
forward.
talking 2-inch, though, you're talking, it makes sense to me that the 2-inch is what would go over the duct vents. That's what you'd use on the duct
Yeah,
vents. So I think it's the duct vents, because he's using 2-inch.
Maybe.
Because usually them, the extenders you put on for it to breathe better, they're only 1/4 inch.
What's a scuttle? Does anybody know what a scuttle is?
Well, I know what it is on a ship, but I don't know what it is on a,
It would work. Well, I think we ought to postpone this vote to
Yeah,
till we have more information.
Clarification.
I will ask them to go back and rewrite and be far more specific in their proposals.
Well, the thing of it is that we don't want to be doing this again next year.
Absolutely not. You waited 8 years, you need to make sure you
Gotta be
get it
done
right. Do it right the first time.
I have a couple questions, Mike.
yes. Oh, go ahead, Dot, and then I'll get to you, John.
Didn't you have an engineer inspection recently of the building with recommendations
Yes.
Yes,
for insulation, ventilation?
yep.
What did he recommend?
That's the one of the.
Well,
That's one of the bids.
what he recommended is one of our bids, which says that the cost for the exhaust vents will be additional. Didn't give us a price, just said it would be materials and it would be at $40 an hour. So we don't know what that fixed amount is, so we can't approve, at least on this proposal, I can't approve something that I don't have a fixed value for unless we want to go estimate what we think that is, and if it's good, fine, if not.
The other
Well,
ones we
the
estimate.
thickness of the insulation, the 6 versus 12, I don't know who gave which.
I don't know either.
Well, one gave 12 dot over areas that we had some compressed fiberglass, and then over where the existing fiberglass insulation was fine, he recommended 6 inches, but the problem that we had right from the start was that even though you have 12 inches of insulation, we still have an issue with heat loss up there. So and the engineers that came to the building, along with this other gentleman, both said that we needed to seal up the vent areas because air was leaking up through there. So they need to be more specific because it's going to cost serious money.
John?
You mentioned that Mr. Churchill was recommended by another organization. This other competitor, Dyer, does he come with references? Has he been recommended?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I actually went to his website last night.
Yeah.
And so he's done a number of jobs throughout the state, all over the place, and, but most of all, the feedback comments were very positive. I mean, he went out and started an old lady's vehicle in the middle of winter, because he was doing work for her through her son, which is out of state. And so they were conversing through email, and so I learned all kinds of stuff on the
Yeah,
internet.
did your homework.
Okay.
So appears to be a very reputable person.
Guarantees, warranties on their work?
They didn't put it in their proposals, but I know in one of the folders we had both. They have to provide us with insurance before we do anything. Certificates.
Yeah, but insurance is a little different than a warranty. Guarantee, warranty, isn't it? Insurance would insure against injuries or things like that, or does
Yep.
the insurance cover a warranty?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Roger.
Dot brings up a point that I think we ought to take very seriously. Had this building had a warranty and had some kind of a,
It did have a warranty.
but if we'd have had this written on paper about insulation, we'd
Well-
have had someplace to go right now.
We did.
I understand that.
She
We held
brings a
money.
good point forward, that's
Well, we had
all.
a warranty, we had an escrow, right? We kept money in escrow, and we actually went back to Benchmark and had them redo the roof based on an engineer's review, whoever we got at the time, and I don't know if Benchmark got the engineer or whatever, but there was some review of that, and, I mean, Mark's probably familiar with that, but we went through all of that and held money back for some number of years before we actually released it, based on those issues. I mean,
I
for a
think-
while, things were okay. I mean, there was a while after that was redone that we didn't have any issues. Was that related to the fact that we had lighter winters or not as much temperature change that caused icing and the heat loss to cause that stuff? Not sure.
And what you're saying, I take, it, and I understand that, Mike, but what I'm bringing up is the fact that, and recently, we had work done at the town garage, and we had an issue of shoddy work. We had issues that we needed to go to a different contractor to have them cleared up. And it's just that, as acting, as council members, I think that's something we've got to take very seriously. That whatever we do moving forward, we've got to be careful to protect ourselves
Right.
from shoddy work. And not stating that anybody was going to do that, but we
Yep.
have to protect ourselves.
Yes, Dale?
Most of the contractors usually give a 1 year on their workmanship contract, so just make sure that's what he's got or whatever.
Right. Okay, so we'll move that to the next meeting. Next meeting's getting full. Okay, next item.
Under other business, town manager's report.
I've already talked about the maps for you to take home. It has been, last 2 weeks here in the office have been somewhat quiet, which is normal for this time of year. You can hear a pin drop some days. We have received 28 applicants for the finance director's position. Some very qualified people. It shows what the economy is doing. We have a lot of, out of all the applicants, 28, probably 6 of them are from the public sector, and the rest are from the private sector. And some of them aren't working, and some of them are working, but we have some good resumes to go through, and Gina, Norma, and myself, and Kathy Mesmer will go through the resumes and hopefully start interviewing next week. It closes on Friday, so we'll have somebody in place pretty soon, hopefully.
Okay,
That's all I have.
all right. Next item.
Is audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward.
Mr. Fellows.
Don Fellows from this side of town. I had just one thing I was going to mention, but since this process has been going on, my blood has been getting a little warmer. We can call it a point of order or not, but I wish, Mike, that you would call on people and follow your own rules, please. People are participating. Dot has something valuable to say, I'm sure, but so do I. And I'd like to have people comment when they're asked on a point of motion or at public comment time, not just off the floor. And that's my request. I think it's in order, but that's just my thoughts on that issue.
So, I mean, just so I understand that, you don't want me to take public comment unless we have a motion?
I do want you to take public comment.
Okay, I think I have been, haven't I?
You've been calling on everybody all through. I thought the rules that you set aside were that you asked for public comment when you made motions and you had a public time to comment, not all through the meeting. And if you want it during the meeting, I'll raise my hand too, but I thought you didn't.
I believe it's at the discretion of the councilors if we want to take public comments during the meeting or not.
Okay, well, I stand corrected. If you do, then I stand corrected. And I'll make sure I raise my hand. The point I wanted to make was that when it comes back to the item that you have tabled to the next conference, to next session, I think the 19th, which was the streetlight ordinance, I think that, as Mr. Maine says, we definitely need an ordinance. I personally believe that we should table or that we should develop a moratorium on any new lighting until we do develop an ordinance. Because I don't think there's a citizen out there that can come to you wanting a light that you can say no to. That's why we have so many lights in this town all over the place. I think we need an ordinance before we put one up. I also think we should consider some sort of development that, say, if you're going to put a new one up, you take one down. Or you at least make one of the ones more energy efficient. Something like that in the ordinance. I realize you're going to table it, but I don't think it is the right thing just to go out there and take a look at somebody who may need a light and just put one up because we can't say no. And that's basically what it amounts to. I don't know how many accidents we've had on all the sections of the road out here where traffic lights or where street lights could be put. I'm sure there are some accidents that have been had, but I don't know if there's been any out at King Road any more than anywhere else. So I don't think we have anything scientific, and maybe the police chief's input would be helpful. So anyway, my 2 cents, I think we need an ordinance before we start sticking lights up. Thanks.
And Don, I'd just like to point out to you, if you read the rules, the meeting rules on the back of the agenda, right, there's a section under there as to when the chairman can invite public comment, which is after council deliberation or discussion, first discussion. And it also says the chairman or his designee may set any rule for public comments that may involve but not limit to restricting the time for each speaker. So, I mean, I'm trying to do the best I can. And I'm making sure that I try to hear the public when they're here at our meetings. Did I not say I stand corrected? All right, you fixed me. I'll raise my hand, I'll make sure I comment. Thanks, Mike. You're welcome, sir. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, next item.
Under appointments, Order 2010-4, Registrar of Voters.
Okay, we need to appoint our registrar voters, and this is for the year? Right.
Yeah, it's for a 2-year period. It expires on the odd number year before a state election, so it's, yeah, it's overdue. This will go until 2011, 9, 10, 11, 2 years, yeah.
So who is our registrar of voters?
Currently, I serve as your
you?
registrar of voters. yeah.
Oh.
Excuse me,
okay.
Mr. Chairman, on the back side of the Churchill
Yep,
is the register.
right, yep.
Everybody seems to be,
Okay.
Ready for it.
Oh,
We're saving trees.
I knew
Paper
I had it,
saving.
but I didn't know where
Right.
it went.
Oh, I got it now, Roger, thank you.
right, and this is per a statute.
But,
Yes, per 21A, Section 101-2.
And our municipal clerk serves this, and it's for a 2-year term.
Yep.
So I would entertain a motion to nominate Twyla as our registrar of voters.
I would make that motion if she's willing.
And I'll
Most
second that.
definitely.
I got a motion from Councilor Larochelle and a second from Councilor Pomelo. Any additional discussions? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Order 2010-5, Voter Registration Appeals Board.
Okay. Here we have to identify our appeals board.
Yes, and this is per 21A, Section 103-1. It states that the council must appoint the person nominated by the political party.
Right.
Our chairman, Diane Ford, has notified us that she would like to have appointed Lisa Ward for the vacant position.
Next page. So we have Lisa Ward for the Democratic Party,
Yes, that's been the
and we have a
nomination.
vacant position.
That is the only.
Oh, that is the
yes.
vacant position,
Yeah,
okay.
Julia Child, Reverend Wilson, Julia
Right,
Wilson,
has
moved away and.
moved away, right.
Yes.
So you won't.
Okay.
And the wrong Julia.
Make a motion that we accept the nomination of Lisa Ward for the vacant position.
A motion from Councilor Larochelle, and a second from Councilor Crafts. Any further discussion? Comments? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Okay. Next item.
Order 2010-6, appoint Ethics Panel Chairman.
As was pointed out at a meeting or so ago, I have to, as chairman, appoint a chairman for the ethics panel. And I have talked to David Bowie again, and he's more than willing to serve that. He's actually in a 3-year term, so I'm going to appoint David as the chairman for this year.
Okay.
Next item, please.
Order 2010-7, Ethics Panel.
We had an opening, as we found out our last meeting, because Sandy's Craig term was up and she was no longer interested. We have talked with Ross Cunningham, who is the alternate, who is more than willing to serve in the full-time capacity. So what I'd like to recommend to council is that we appoint Ross as the full-time member, stepping up from the alternate, and we'll continue to advertise for an alternate member so that we fulfill the committee. But at least should the committee need to act on anything, they would have a full membership required to perform their functions.
Makes sense.
So I
I'll
would
make a
entertain-
motion, I'll make a motion to put Ross Cunningham in as a full-time member and to continue looking for an alternate member.
I have a motion from Councilor Cody.
Second that.
I have a second from Councilor Pomelo. Any further discussion? Any comments? All those, oh,
I do. I have something I'd like to bring up. The ethics panel reviews issues of ethics for the council or for whatever's going on in our little town. But they are just to bring it to the council, let the council vote on it. I think we should look, I guess what I want to say is that in the past year, this council has obviously not done a great job policing itself. There's been a lot of things that have gone on, and they were not policed very well at all. I would like the council to review giving the ethics panel a little bit more bite, a little bit more authority in the decisions when it comes to ethics. Because it's obvious this council is not going to police itself. And I think that it's time that we have a board like the ethics panel. If things are done unethically, they'll have the bite to come in and make corrections. And I think the council ought to review that.
That would be a change in our charter, wouldn't it?
If it means changing the charter, then we change the charter. But I think it is time that we have a little bit more bite in our enforcing the rules of the council and the rules of the way things are done within the town. This last year, if nothing else, has proven to the townspeople and to the council that there's been a lot of things unethically at best. And if we need to go into a special workshop to discuss some of these things, I'd be more than happy to do so and bring in information to prove what I'm saying is true. But I think that it's time that this council looks at giving the ethics panel a little bit more authority into making sure things are done ethically.
What's the solution to that problem, Roger? What do you think they should be able to do?
I think that if the ethics panel looks and reviews the actions of a particular member of either the council or even a member of the employment of the town, and they do something that is unethical, I think they should have the right to come down with sentencing time off or reprimanding them, and then let the council vote on it, other than what they do now. Now, the ethics panel is more or less just a review and nothing is actually ever done about it.
So basically, you think they should override what the council does then?
I think they should have the power to be a little more forceful in some way. I think that's something we need to discuss, because it's obvious this council is not going to police itself.
That's a matter of opinion, Roger.
Obvious
That's
to you.
personal opinion.
well,
That's
I mean,
your own personal opinion.
Well, whatever, you know.
the current process of the ethics panel is that they come back with an advisory position. So they advise the council on what they feel should be done, and then the council
Does
can
nothing.
accept that, they can accept that advisory. I mean, I think typically the council has accepted their advisory position based
Absolutely.
on what they've come back with. In fact, I think, Mr. Cody, you actually asked that we vote on one of the situations that
did.
came back, and the council actually took a vote and agreed to what the advisory board did, so.
But there's,
I mean, I see no reason to take this any further than letting, I mean, at the end of the day, the council has to administer all of this stuff and needs to take into consideration all aspects. And, I mean, I think that's what the Ethics Board brings forward by having an Ethics Board. So, I mean, I think they're doing basically what you're asking for them to do, is they do diligence, they come back with an advisory position, and then the council accepts that position, or if they don't agree with that position, then they can institute some other type of process from what they've heard.
And
Yeah.
didn't the council act on their recommendation?
Yes.
So far, the Ethics Board has worked perfectly well, so I don't know, I don't understand.
So, when it's,
We did the recommendations,
yes.
so,
Now, what the point that I'm bringing up is that when things are done not ethically, must everything be brought through the ethics panel? Or will this council supposed to deal with it without having to do that?
Council can police itself, council can address things. Council cannot address personnel issues.
Right.
Our personnel manager, who happens to be our town manager, is responsible for personnel issues. So that is not for real subject of the council to address. I'm not even sure if the ethics committee gets involved there. I suppose maybe they could, but again, it would be then left to our personnel manager, the town manager, to take action from that advisory position. It would be my view of that. So, I mean, Vern?
Well, my understanding is, and which I think has worked in the past, is, Roger, as a council member, if we actually, any of us, I mean, there's, any of us 7 have a concern with something being ethical or not, the tool that we have to not make it an argument is to go to the Ethics Board and present it properly, so it's kind of removed from the council at that point in time, so the Ethics Board can look at if there is a ethics problem, or if there's a conflict, then report back to us. It's kind of, to me, is an outside look of what a concern we may have. And, you know, I really feel that as a council, if we feel that there is a certain circumstance or a certain situation happening, instead of actually, you know, we can police it ourselves to a certain point, but yet, for us to actually get an outside look for it, I think that's why the Ethics Board is there, so we can actually kind of put to a, you know, other group of people, have them look at it, get all the information and report back to us. So I think it is a very useful tool the way it is right now, and hopefully, again, over the last year, it's been used a couple times, since it's been put in place, and I think it's worked pretty well. But I mean, it's a tool that we can use at any time, I mean, if there was ever a concern, but.
I don't agree with the way that the council has policed itself and whatsoever. And if I have to, I'll start bringing up specifics, but it obviously has not. I guess I have to bring it up to make it work. What happened back in February to me by Mr. Brooks, we went into an executive session, and because it was dealing with me, I can speak it. We were specifically told that everything that was said that evening was totally hearsay or was an untruth. And there was nothing this council could do to me because I did nothing wrong according to the guidelines. Now, had it been any other counselor put through what I was put through, I can assure you something would have been done. But it was not. And when somebody accuses you in public, and then they are told that it is all false, that is a lie. And the person saying it is a liar. And this council did nothing. As a chairman, Mr. Bowie, you never attempted to stop the humiliation and the lying going on at that podium that evening. And as a counselor and chairman, you should have stopped it. We are going to be going into an executive session to deal with Mr. Eldridge or with whoever in the future. Why? It's okay to humiliate Mr. Cody in public.
it's okay to lie about Mr. Cody in public and do nothing about it? And then have our town attorney stand up and tell us that could possibly have opened the town up to a multi-million-dollar lawsuit and do nothing about it? And that's policing? I have a real issue with it. I have proof. I have not received documentation that other councilors have, because I have somebody in this town office that sent me that information. Why not? I am a councilor, voted, and I will tell you this, received more votes than any single other councilor on this bench. Why am I not being treated equally? I'm sick of it. The public knows about it, the public talks about it, and nothing's being done about it. I came into a workshop and I got threatened, and I didn't like it. And this council did nothing. And I think that this is where I go about policing. We have 2 new councilors, Ms. Pomelo, Mr. Lunt. Are their emails working? Absolutely not. You go on the town website, their emails are not working. Mr. Maine sent out emails. They didn't receive it. Why? That should have been done immediately. When any of you councilors came aboard, your emails were working immediately. Why are these people's not? Why was mine 8 months not working? This is the kind of thing that is starting to upset me. We're going into another budget session and probably another session where I'll get bawled out by the police chief, but the bottom line is, we need to start policing ourselves. That is not right. And I go out into public and I talk to people, and they sit here and they go, this council is not working. This council is only doing what they have in their own private little interests. That's wrong, Mike. You last year and the rest of the council voted to do some changes to the charter. Why? So that you can continue your tenure as chair? It's time to change, to have different ideas, to have other people participate. Why are we doing this? Why are we not allowing other people to participate? Is it because only you have the ideas that this town needs to work on? No, Mike. There are other issues. There are people. Mr. Larry Shell would have made an outstanding chairman, would have brought new voice to the town. But the people in town look at the council and they go, same old, same old. Same old 4 votes to 3. We're going to have the same thing for another year. This is not what the townspeople want. And these are times that we have to change this. As a council, we're supposed to be working for the people of the community, not for our own special interests. And I just think it's now is the time, before another budget season starts, that we start working together and stop this stupid foolishness. And you can laugh about it, Mr. Kraft, but I'm going to tell you, I can bring out a lot more information that I have received from people of this community that are not very happy. And what's going to end up happening, this council will be removed. And I've asked, you don't think so, you can smirk all you want, Dale, but it's going to happen. Another thing that's going to happen is, we have people in this community that want to vote on their town budget. And if it doesn't happen within the next meeting, they're going to do a citizens initiative. They're going to collect the votes, and they're going to force it down our throats. And we're going to have to do it then. Why do our public have to do that? They've told us that's what they want, repeatedly, and we don't do it. Instead, we'll change the charter so we can stay as chairman. And I think it's wrong.
Dale?
Well, I think we do have the process about bringing it before the people so they can vote on the budget. Ain't we working on that?
Yes, we are.
So I don't understand you there. And
Yeah, we're going to do it next November after the budget.
If the people are so upset in this town, why did he just re-elect him? I mean, wait a minute, you said the people are so upset, why are they electing the same people? If they're so upset, and they're not
Because of the
about voting.
manipulating of the votes, and you
Oh,
know it,
here we
Dale.
go. We got a conspiracy now.
Dale, look at
We
it.
got a conspiracy.
All right,
Watch out.
all right.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done. I got one more
Well-
thing, Mike. Excuse me. And the threat that you brought up that said that Gina threatened you.
I never said Gina threatened
Remember the
anything.
workshop you talked about?
I
You
never
she threatened
said
it,
anybody
And you said you
particular.
had it on tape recorded?
Yes, I
I
did.
want to hear it, because you
I
haven't
will.
shown it yet. Because I was there, she never threatened you. You made that one up too, Roger.
No, I did not.
Half-truths and lies.
No,
is
I
what
did
you
not.
do.
I
Okay,
did not,
gentlemen,
Dale.
That's all I got
that's
to say.
enough. We have an ethics appointment.
I
We
do
a-
have it, and I
We
will
have it,
present it.
Roger? We have an ethics appointment that we need to address now. We have a motion on the floor to make Ross Cunningham a full-time alternate. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
All right, next item,
Council Communications.
Council of Communications. Oh, did somebody have their hand up? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a comment. I am the public, and
Rules we have developed.
I am the public, and I think that you're doing fine. I think if those people really want to vote on the budget, then they should go and get all their signatures and have a vote on it. You were reelected. It's a new year. Start fresh. You can't go back to February now. It's just too late. Just watch what happened and continue what you're doing. I think the meetings I've been to lately are the way they should be. You should be able to disagree to agree at one point, and you should all leave here and respect everybody the way the vote went. And I don't know, you keep talking as the people. I'm the people, and I don't agree with a lot that you say, Mr. Cody. Maybe some of it is true. I haven't been here long enough, but a lot of it that you say, as me as a person, I don't agree with it.
Okay,
Communications, are we there?
yeah,
There's another one going to the mic.
Council of Communications. Nope.
Dot Fitzgerald, resident of the town of Lisbon. I invite all of you to watch the town council meeting Thursday evening. When Mr. Cody brought it up about the ethics panel maybe needing a little bit more authority, he brought it up as a comment. I'm trying to be very, very impartial here, but you, Mr. Bowie, sounded very argumentative with your comments. And Gina, I'm sorry, but you did also. Watch and listen to yourselves Thursday evening. Fern Larochelle did a good job. He had, his comments were discussion and comments, but not argumentative. You really, it's hard, I'm sure, because there have been a lot of hard feelings in this town council previously. And, but my suggestion is watch and listen and see how you responded to Mr. Cody's suggestion that, and then it became very argumentative with Mr. Cody as well. So, my comment. Thank you. Bye.
I'd like to address that, Mike.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald, I have to tell you that I have a hard time agreeing with what Roger said, because
know.
3 months previous to when all this problem took place in February, Roger approached me several times, making accusations that were said that evening about Chief Brooks. And he told me many things that were said that same evening. And that was 3 months previous to that. So I have a hard time believing that it was all lies, because I had been told 3 months previous to that that something was going to come down and some people were going to get taken out through all this. That's why I have a problem with it. And I also have a problem because just a few meetings ago, Mr. Cody himself said that it's time to wipe the slate clean, it's time to start over, it's time to try to agree with one another. And as far as I can recall, I don't see anything that has happened in the past few weeks that would cause Mr. Cody to think that anything unethical has happened since then. And for him to make that comment himself and say we need to start clean, I don't see that happening. So I think that's probably why I disagreed with him tonight. And I just think it's very sad that we as representatives of this town continue to dig up dirt about one another and cast accusations that many times are not true. And that's why I disagree with Roger.
There are ways of disagreeing in as Mr. LaRochelle did, in a discussion rather than an argumentative response. And that's why I'm saying, watch and listen Thursday evening and see what maybe I perceived it wrong. I don't know, but this was my perception of it, that Mr. Bowie immediately got his dander up and was argumentative, and then your comment was very brief, but it appeared to be argumentative. And if you want a clean slate, maybe now's the time to do it.
Well, I think we put the ethics panel into place
Yeah.
to take care of these kind of things.
That's
And
true.
it's something that's very new.
Yeah.
We've used it a couple of times, but I just feel because things didn't maybe go the way Mr. Cody thinks they should have gone, that's why he's a little bit upset about it. And that's my personal opinion.
Nothing ever goes the way we all want.
Exactly. So I just think we need to give things
I mean,
time.
all of us.
Oh, I agree. And I think we need to give this time. And if another situation arises and it's not taken care of correctly, possibly maybe we need to do that. But I don't feel it's necessary at this time. That's my opinion.
I do agree with Mr. Cody on that. When Chief Brooks was up, he had about an hour and a half of just making a grandstand play, and anyone else would have been called out of order and asked to sit down.
Okay, Councilor Communications. Do we have any further?
What I'd like to see is something we did either in the past, or it might have been 2 years ago now that Steve has mentioned, where we look at all the committees that the town has, and as council people decide which committees we can serve on, which ones we can't. Over the last year, I know I had volunteered to sit on the rec committee, which I've sat on through a few meetings, but being kind of in the middle of the facilities committee, I really haven't had the time to probably do what I should with the rec committee, so I think it's time to look back and review and see if there's other people willing to get hooked up with some of the committees, so they're actually all kind of, I don't want to use the word monitored, but actually participated in to make sure that we don't have that lack of communication we've had in the past. That would be my request.
Good. We can put together a list of all the committees we have and currently who's trying to tag team which ones, and then with the new councilors and everything, kind of pick where you'd like to try and participate a little more in either learning or, being able to be an ear to come back to the council with, and try not to do too much overlap or whatever, so that we can kind of cover as much as we can. So we'll pull that together and provide it to council so we can discuss it maybe at our next meeting. So, and,
Get you a list of all the committees, so you have a chance to.
and could you put on that when they meet?
Yep.
The day of the week and roughly the time frame, so that council will know how they can fit which ones into their schedule? Okay. Any other communications? Mark, you got anything?
I don't know. I do want to say thanks to the Lisbon Public Works for their hard work over this weekend, because that was a nasty storm. They did a great job keeping all those roads open, and they worked really hard at that. And I think Lisbon has one of the better plow jobs of most of the towns around. Our roads are usually much better than if you drive out to Sabatis or somewhere, and their roads tend to get all snow covered in a storm like that. And we do a real good job here. So, thanks, guys. Keep up the good work.
Mike, we have a considerable group of people that I work with that come from all different areas and stuff, and they all repeatedly rave on how nice the roads in Lisbon are during storm. I've heard that many times, that, well, you can tell when you hit the Lisbon roads, it's all clear. Most of them, a lot of them have, bare tire showing, and hats off to the town, to the Public Works Department. They do an awesome job.
Great.
I have one other thing after.
Great.
Just wanted to remind folks of the public hearing Thursday night at 7 o'clock at the high school.
That's right.
That's what I was going to mention if someone else did. Thank you, Lori.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to be there, but it is important for people to come and listen to what's being presented.
Absolutely. That's 7 o'clock at the high school.
Correct.
And
First day, January 7th.
January 7th.
Gymnasium.
Could I add just a bit to that? Could I add just a little bit to that, if
Sure.
possible? One of the real important reasons for coming out, if you have a concern about, in past, some of the votes we have about rebuilding versus the idea of re-renovating the school, if you have any interest in the high school and want to make it better, please show up to the meeting, because it's going to, this hopefully is going to start snowballing into a very big push for the citizens of Lisbon Falls to try to make the high school better. And that's just not the high school, but other buildings, but the one we're focusing on right now is the high school. So it's going to take town support, and there's going to be, anything we do is going to need to go out to a town vote. So we hope everybody gets well informed, so when they do go out to vote, they're voting on something that they understand. And this meeting is the first of those meetings. So Thursday night, try to be there if you have any questions, because hopefully we'll get a chance to answer them.
I'd like to add to that Mr. Green has put a whole new, fresh outlook on the high school program, what they're trying to do, and I think the people of the community should give him an opportunity to listen to him, and I think they're going to be very pleased. The atmosphere seems to be a lot more of working together with the council and the school board, and I think it's a very positive. And I'd like to see people show up at the meeting and give Mr. Green a listen to. I think he'll be very pleased.
Anything else? All set? Okay. Next item.
Is Order 2010-8 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 405-6D, labor negotiations.
And I will say, just for the public's sake, the many of you that are here, we're going to go into executive session. We have a few items to discuss. We'll be coming out, and then we'll be adjourning to a workshop to discuss some charter changes, potential charter changes. So I'm not sure exactly how long we'll be in the executive session, but the workshop, hopefully it's quick, but the workshop is, of course, open to the public, not necessarily for comment, but can listen and hear or whatever. So with that, I would entertain a motion for the executive session.
I'll make a motion to move into executive session.
I have a motion from Councilor Cody.
Second that.
I have a second from Councilor Rochelle. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you very much.